Does anybody have anything they want to discuss before we get started? Nobody?
I have a quick one, Ryan.
Good morning, Udul.
Morning. Hey, quick one. I have this house. We put an offer on it. The appraisal came back last Friday. I let the agent know, and she's contesting the appraisal. You know, she thinks it's too low. How long does she have to contest, or do we have to wait? I mean, it's Wednesday. That was Friday. I gave her notice Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I still haven't heard from her.
Yeah, they're not going to have it. They're not going to have it figured out that quickly. But you don't need to wait at all. The appraisal came back, and it's
Lower.
Of course, and you're going to and you're trying to get out of the deal. If it's too late.
No. They want to keep it, but they're just still looking for, it's an FHA. They're still looking for closing costs. So, but we just want to hear back from them.
So you asked them to lower the price to meet the appraisal.
Correct.
Okay. Well, they need to let you know whether or not they're going to lower the price so you can go forward.
Yeah.
When is your closing scheduled for?
The 16th of October.
Okay. Well, obviously your loan is in hold. It can't go to underwriting or anything until you get that figured out.
All right.
So I would talk to the lender and see when you need it done by to close on time. Otherwise, I mean, you can walk today if you want. Does your buyer want to walk, or they want them to come down? But.
They don't mind the sale price, but I mean, whatever price they appraise at, they're okay with or without closing costs. But we're just waiting on the realtor to give us, hey, you need to accept the appraised value.
How much lower was it?
It was like 15,000.
On a what price house?
She listed for 265, and it came in at 250.
Okay, that's about 7% low. It's kind of a big deal, and it doesn't sound like it's going to work. But
yeah, well, they're hoping it would be higher, but the comps, an appraiser, they don't really renege on their the value regardless.
Here's the thing with appraisals, and we've had appraisers come in here and talk to you guys before, not into Zoom, but real life, regular meetings pre-COVID, and they'll make it stretch if it's close.
Right.
If you look at that appraisal and you don't see any glaring weaknesses, there's a reason it came in 15 grand low. And I'm just telling you this from your side.
Yes.
Your side, I would prepare my buyer to be. In fact, I'd be looking right now.
Yeah.
That's unlikely that they came in 7% low on a 265, 15 grand low on a 265.
Yeah, we were kind of like shocked because we're like, it's in Groveland, we understand, but but the comps he gave was like lower than 250. So.
Well, I mean, Groveland's selling, especially in that price range. Everything's selling.
Yeah.
So that's being in Groveland's no excuse for it. That's why it's 265 to start with. Probably it's probably a pretty nice house.
Yeah.
So I would prepare to be looking for something else, Udul, and I wouldn't be too optimistic about that deal. I hate to say, unless they will come down, and it doesn't sound like they're willing to come down. And it's a big chunk to come down. Yeah,
15,000. I mean, they're losing about 7 because we got 7,000 closing costs, or it was like 265, 57.
And this brings up something I talk to you guys about from time to time. When you're working with these deals that want money back at the end, when you're working with these deals, realize that you're talking your seller into taking how much ever less than appraisal.
Right.
No matter what. So when you're talking to your seller about deals, be careful about the money that you give back, which has become like this assumed thing now. But be careful when you do that, because you're always talking, all a seller wants, you can always explain to your seller, look, we got appraised value, right? Even if the appraisal is a little bit lower than it should be in your opinion, or the CMA, what the CMA showed that you did for them. But when you give back $7,000 or $5,000 or $15,000, whatever it is at closing, you are guaranteeing that your seller is not going to get, they're going to get that much, at least that much below appraisal. And a lot of times if the appraisal comes back fine or even high, they got an additional, if it comes back $5,000 higher than sale price, they got an additional $7,000 less. So be
Good.
careful when you do that. And of course, if you're on the buying side, you're negotiating your client a good deal. But now when it comes back low, you've got an issue. Of course, if
Correct.
you're on the buying side, you always want that money back at closing. And unfortunately, you get a lot of buyers who they need it, right?
Yes.
So when you're
FHA.
when you're on the selling side and you see somebody needs cash for closing, you know that they're never going to go above appraisal. And they're highly unlikely because they don't have money. And any amount over appraisal, a duals buyer's bank will still loan what they were going to loan before on this deal, or what they would loan to up to that 250 appraisal. But the buyer's now got to come out of cash 15 grand if the seller doesn't drop their price, theoretically, or they got to find another house, which is where they are.
Where they are.
So I'm assuming a duals client, and I'm sure it's correctly, does not have $15,000 laying around, or they wouldn't have been getting 7,000 back at closing to start.
Right.
Right. So now the seller is stuck with this contract. Now they're $15,000 lower than they thought, plus $7,000. So now they're getting 7,000 less in appraisal. So just keep that in mind when you do this. Any other questions or comments? Abdul, do you understand what I'm saying? If the seller, you're going to need to find out if the seller is going to come down. I'm going to assume that this isn't going to work. This appraisal contestation is not going to work, and that they're going to stick with that appraisal. So if the seller's not willing to come down, then you're probably going to have to find another place.
But it does on Monday. Well, it was a conventional loan, so I know at FHA it's stuck with the system.
No
Right?
lender's going to go above. No lender's going to go above appraisal. If it was 5% down or 10% down or whatever, that's what they're going to use for the amount. It doesn't matter what the purchase price is. They're going to use the appraisal amount, whichever's lower.
Right.
And in this case, it's going to be the appraisal.
The appraisal.
So they're only going to loan, if it's a 10% down, they're only going to loan 90% of 250, not 90% of 265. So either way, those people got to come out of pocket. But anybody who's begging for cash back at closing probably doesn't have a lot of cash to go. Certainly not 15 grand extra.
Right.
On a deal like that. All right.
Thanks,
so keep that in mind, you guys, when you're the listing agent, all of those things to look out for. If I were the listing agent in that deal, I would tell my client, just let them walk, and we'll take a deal that doesn't give 7 grand back. And at least that way we know we'll get 250. Right. All right. So, but here we are now, 30 days down the line, and we've just wasted 30 days. So let me go to some screen share stuff here. Selamar's got a question there. How much longer is a financing contingency if the buyers change lenders? It is not any longer. It doesn't matter. That's not the seller's problem. So changing lenders, you better do it early. It's tough to change a horse midstream. So only if the seller will agree to it, you can negotiate that and say, look, we had to change lenders. This lender swears they can get it done. So if you give us an extra 10 or 15 days, then maybe they will. Let me go to screen share. And I'm going to share my screen over here. Hold on a second. Okay. So here we are. Can you guys, everybody seeing the screen share? Give me a head nod if you are. Okay. Yes. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. This is obviously a fake contract. We do not have the Bob and Jane seller selling to Susan buyer, but we have a, hold on one second. I've got to keep letting people in come on in. All right. So here we go. Guys, I did some things in here. I want to talk about the timelines of the contract, but I did some things in here that are, just other stuff that I hear you guys struggling with from time to time. As you guys probably know, a lot of these trainings are things that have come up with you guys during the week or the month, and they're things that I want to bring to everybody's attention so we don't, we all learn from each other's mistakes, things left out and stuff like that. Personal property. Guys, I don't care what it says in the MLS. Please try to do the MLS right. Put in all the stuff that was on your, guys, if you do the listing agreement right, if you do your data entry sheet right, you're going to get everything right in the MLS. Then the contract overrides everything in the MLS. You cannot go in with an argument that said, but it said in the MLS they were leaving their washer and dryer. Okay? you guys heard me say this before, realtors have got to be the #1 purchaser of washers and dryers in America, because we always forget to put this stuff down. The seller always says, oh yeah, I plan to leave the washer and dryer, and then they don't. Well, my new house didn't have a washer and dryer. When I told you that, I thought it did, right? So they don't have the washer and dryer. They take their washer and dryer, and it doesn't matter if it was in the MLS. It needs to be in the contract that they're leaving their washer and dryer. If they have a fancy washer and dryer, they will try to replace their Samsungs with scratch and dent mismatched pairs that they found on Craigslist. So if they have a fancy one, write it in here, right? Samsung washer and dryer, have a picture of it, take the model number, whatever you need to do. All right. If it's something is excluded, the seller wants to take their crystal chandelier in the dining room. This is not going to be on the offer that you get. You need to put it on here. So the buyer is going to be more worried about what you're leaving. You're going to be more worried about what your seller is taking with them. Okay. So read an offer carefully when you get it. Make sure if this seller told you 3 times that their crystal chandelier they got from their mother is going with them, you better make sure it's on this contract. Okay. Otherwise it's attached to the house, right? So make sure it's on there. Okay. Purchase price, escrow amount, fake title company, 95%, 12.5. That's just math. Okay. Acceptance. We gave them a couple of days. We're going to close in this contract in 50 days, roughly, right? Why 50 days right now? Anybody know why I would do 50 days right now when I normally do shorter? Because underwriting is killing you guys. Title is killing you guys on timing, and people are having to beg for extensions for another week. I would give myself 50 days right now to close. All right, assignability. When you get up here, guys, if you're buying, we talked about last week investment properties. If there's a lease there, especially if you're the listing agent, you better make sure this is checked. Okay? Make sure that's checked if there's a tenant there. Otherwise, this is what says that you have to deliver a property that is not occupied. Okay? So if I sell a property like this and they say, oh my gosh, we wanted to live there. If this isn't checked and I agree with this contract, my seller signs off on this contract, they can force me to buy out that tenant, or they can sue me for blowing up the deal at the end. They can sue me for, not me, but my client, who's going to blame me for, and rightfully so, for having having to pay for their inspection and appraisal and anything else that they got because of this. You guys understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If this can't close, because of this, it's a seller's fault. And by extension, your fault. Anybody have any questions on that?
Can you repeat that, please?
Yes. This one right here, 6B, property is subject to lease or occupancy after closing. If you have a property that's an investment property and it has a tenant in it, and they're going to be there, to at least for the stay of their lease, you need to make sure that this is checked. Okay. Make sure that's checked when you get this offer from the other party. If it is not, they're not going to take, if they're planning to live there. If they're buying it and the person's there probably won't be a problem. But if they're planning to live there, they're going to want this thing empty. Or if they're planning to just renovate the place and lease it back out, what you're telling them here is that this place is empty. So make sure this is checked if you're going to have a tenant in the property when they take over. Okay. Assignability. Do you guys understand assignability? Buyer may assign and thereby be released for any further liability under this contract. Who does that one? Anybody know who likes to click those?
Which one? Assign?
The first one under
Wholesale?
7.
If you have a corporation and you're gonna assign it.
Maybe. What else?
Investors.
To somebody else.
Who likes to click this first one? Who likes to check this first one? May assign and thereby be released from any further liability.
A middleman,
Nobody.
the middleman
Correct.
investor.
The people who consider themselves wholesalers, they like to call it, but they're contract flippers, right?
Right.
Those are who checks this one. I would never let my sellers sign something that had that. This one, I do not mind, and I put this on one if I'm writing a contract. May assign but not be released from liability under this contract. Okay, why do I like it to be assignable? husband has bad credit and can't be on there. Wife has bad credit, or wife has good credit and they need to put her on there. We need to add a party. We need to delete a party, or we need to, like Idul just said, we need to put it in an LLC or a corporation or something like that. We can do that without the other side having to be bothered with an addendum. Okay. And being able to say no and get out of the deal. All right. So I like this one. Maybe it may assign, but not be released from liability under the contract. Okay. I don't mind that even if I'm on the seller side and someone sends that to me. I appreciate that. That's perfectly fine. It's reasonable. How many of you guys have had buyers who have had to assign a contract, you had to change the names on a contract? Raise your hand if you've had that. Buyers had to change their name on a contract or change the names on it.
Or assign it, yeah.
Yeah, it happens all the time. Okay. But this, I haven't even got the timelines yet, which is the whole point of this thing. Here we go. Financing, obviously cash, that's great. Line 86, this contract is contingent upon buyer obtaining approval of a conventional, I did this time, loan within 30 days. What do you guys realize here is I'm not leaving things blank. I like to make things very clear because it's very clear from my client when I'm asking them to sign this offer, if I'm the buyer's agent, and it's very clear for the seller if I'm asking them to sign the offer to accept it, right? 30 days after the effective date. Let's read this again. The contract is contingent upon buyer obtaining approval of a conventional loan within 30 days after the effective date. The loan approval period. I know some of you old guys, the reason not old people, but older agents, more experienced agents, like to say loan commitment, loan commitment, loan commitment. You will not see the words loan commitment anywhere in here. You'll see title commitment, but you will not see loan commitment anywhere in this contract anymore. So for a fixed loan, adjustable rate, and the loan amount of whatever it is, and an interest rate not to exceed, I put 3.25. I always like to keep this low in case I need to get my buyer out of a deal. And if I'm on the listing side, I like to see it higher, and I'm still seeing like 4% and stuff like that. That's okay. For a term of 30 years, pretty typical. Any questions on that?
But Ryan, like you just said, like in the seller side, the buyer side, I know you put a number just so you can get out of the contract, but as a seller side, you're like, what if you leave it blank and leave prevailing?
Prevailing doesn't allow your, I don't mind on the seller side if it says prevailing, but I on the buyer side, I like to put something low there. What's on their pre-approval is what I like to put there. Whatever they're pre-approved.
Okay.
Okay. But I'd like to, and if I don't know what it is, I like to put something low in there. Always gives us an extra out if we need it.
Right, just in case you need to get out of the
But if
contract.
you're the listing agent, you don't really want that there.
Correct.
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
As a listing, you want it high because you don't want them to get out of it.
Correct. So I know you guys know this, but if we're on the listing side, we're helping the seller, and if we're on the buying side, we're helping the buyer.
Exactly.
And we're trying to keep our options open for both of them, right?
Okay.
So, so this is what we're doing. Okay. 5, I don't like to leave it blank. Guys, make sure, all right, so here's where you get your calendar out. You guys remember when Tom came in about a year ago and did a calendar for you showing you that back then they could close in 30 days. I wouldn't count on that right now. He'll say they can, they all say they can. But get a calendar for every deal. And I don't care if it has to be a paper calendar or if you go into your calendar and do it, a separate calendar for every deal, and write your timelines down. This is important. Within 5 days, they have to have that application in. You guys, maybe some of you in here right now your clients have been burned on this because that is a breach of contract and they can lose their escrow for breaching their contract. Okay. If you do not do it within 5 days, a lot of people think, oh, we don't really have to do anything until the inspection period. You have got to get your loan approval in 5 days. If you don't like that, make it 15. But if you want to get this deal done, you need to make it 5. And you need to get their application in within 5 days. What kind of buyer won't make their application within 5 days? Would you say they're serious if they won't?
No.
Probably not, right? Get their
I
application.
mean, they should have been already in if they're serious.
Correct. Thank you. So that's what we're doing. Make sure they're in. That's the first thing that goes on here. Actually, the first thing should be ordering your inspection, then this, right? Make sure their application is in. So Buyers used to, okay, let's read through this. I'm going to read this. Buyers shall make mortgage loan application for financing within 5 days after effective date and use good faith and diligent effort to obtain approval of a loan meeting the financing terms, loan approval, and thereafter to close this contract. Loan approval means requiring, loan approval which requires a condition to the issues with this recently too. This is a contingent on sale of buyer's property. You guys have seen that addendum? Everybody nod
Yes.
if you've seen that addendum. If not, we can go over that sometime. It's very simple and straightforward. It just says, and this is, guys, anytime you don't have first-time home buyers, they're going to pretty much have to go from one house to another. Most of the time, they're going to have to sell that house unless they can just afford to buy both houses. So most of the time, they're going to have to sell that house. That's going to be a condition of the loan, but that shall not be deemed loan approval if it's still contingent on that. Okay. Buyer's failure to use diligent effort to obtain loan approval during the loan approval period shall be considered a default under the terms of this contract. Default breach, same thing. For purposes of this provision, diligent effort includes, but is not limited to, timely furnishing all documents and information and paying of all fees and charges requested by buyer's mortgage broker and lender in connection with buyer's mortgage loan application. How many of you guys have had your lender call you and tell you they're chasing their buyer, your buyer around for paperwork? Anybody have that? Yeah. How do you know that with this happened back in, if you look at this back in 2017, they changed this contract, and now the buyer shall keep seller and seller's broker fully informed about the status of buyer's mortgage loan application, loan approval. The seller's broker, meaning the listing agent, including you, if you're on the listing side, can call the lender and see if the buyer is doing everything they're supposed to do. You guys understand that? You can do that, which means if you're on the buyer side, the listing agent can do that, right?
We need to ask for permission or?
Nope.
No.
No, you have a contract right here. It says it right here in the contract. You can do it. Buyer shall keep seller and broker fully informed about the status of buyer's mortgage loan application, loan approval, and loan processing, and authorizes buyer's mortgage broker, lender, and closing agent to disclose such status and progress and release preliminary and finally executed closing disclosures and settlement statements to seller and broker. Let me ask you guys something. In practice, do you think it ever happens that the actual loan officer is running behind and blames it on the buyer?
Yes.
Yep, you've heard that. You've seen that, right?
Yeah.
Because the listing agent will call you and say, hey, I talked to the loan officer and he says that, what's her name? Susan Buyer isn't turning in her documents and Susan's been copying you on them. And you've seen this document already a week ago, right? That happened? Absolutely. Yeah. So just when you're the listing agent, just keep that in mind that this isn't always the gospel that you hear from anybody, right?
Is it appropriate?
Ryan.
Yes.
Ryan, sometimes like the question Selimar asked, that's I found out a few times, I usually call the lender to find out what's going on. And then you find out the lender is like, who is Susan? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not working with Susan anymore. She's switched lender.
Yes. Do you think that's buyer shall keep seller and broker fully informed about the status of buyer's mortgage loan application? Do you think that's being followed if they do that?
No.
Nope. Right.
Sometimes the agent doesn't inform you until you call a lender because the buyer does it themselves.
Yep. Correct. Do you think that's a breach of contract if the buyer isn't keeping everyone informed?
Yeah.
Yes. Certainly could be threatened with that. Also, this is, keep in mind up here too, diligent effort is a very gray area. Diligent effort includes, if you look back up to line 96, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor or not, but line 96, diligent effort includes, but is not limited to, timely furnishing all documents and information and paying of all fees and charges requested by buyer's mortgage broker. What is timely furnishing 3 years tax returns or 2 years tax returns? How many days do you get for that? You know what I mean? It's a gray area. There's not a real answer to that. So it's a gray area on all that stuff. Okay.
Is it appropriate for the list agent to contact the buyer's lender?
No, that's what I'm saying. No, you should as listing agent. Call them directly. Right. And the one you have on the pre-approval is where I would start. But if not, they need to keep you informed of who it is. That's what Edul's talking about. Sometimes a listing agent will call and the lender will say, I haven't talked to Susie Buyer in 3 weeks. I understand she's working with somebody else now. Okay.
Gotcha. Mhm.
Or she hasn't returned my calls in 2 weeks, right? Which
Yeah,
doesn't
because she
necessarily mean
switched.
she's in breach of that. What she's in breach of is not telling you that she's changed lenders. All right. Here's what happens when this all comes down. This is what the loan approval happens. This is what it means. Upon buyer obtaining loan approval, buyer shall promptly deliver written notice of such approval to seller. If buyer is unable to obtain loan approval after the exercise of diligent effort, then at any time prior to expiration of loan approval period, buyer may provide written notice to seller stating that buyer has been unable to obtain loan approval and has elected to either, 1, waive loan approval, in which event the contract will continue as if loan approval had been obtained, or 2, terminate the contract. So 3 things you can do, okay? 3 things you do as the buyer's agent in this case. 1, you have loan approval, which is awesome, and we go forward, right? That's what we're assuming is going to happen.
And
2,
that's with conditions, correct? That's a loan approval with some conditions.
loan approval, there's almost always conditions of something, right?
And if you don't think they can meet those conditions, then you would want to cancel, correct?
If they can't meet those, yes. If their condition is that they need to do something that they can't do, then yes, it's not. If their condition is selling their house, their house has to close first. You can still go forward with this, and if their house doesn't sell, they can still get out if it's contingent on the sale.
Right.
Okay, you still get your money back. I mean, you can always get out. You just lose your escrow, right? But you can get out right out to closing day, but you just lose your escrow. All right. So 3 things you can do. 1, yes, we're going forward. 2, we do not have. Read this line carefully, line 107. These are your options if you do not have it. You can waive loan approval, in which event the contract will continue as if loan approval had been obtained. In other words, I do not have loan approval yet, but I feel so good about this, we're still going forward. Okay? That's option 2. Do you guys understand that? We're optimistic that even though we don't have loan approval technically yet, we're sure that we're going to do this, and we're going to risk our escrow.
But wouldn't you let the buyer make that decision too?
Oh no, only the buyer makes that decision. You don't make that
okay.
decision.
Yeah,
Absolutely
okay.
not. You don't say, let's do it. I want that commission. Let's roll the dice, baby.
Right.
Right. The third thing is you can terminate the contract. Okay. We're not getting loan approval. I'm not sure that we're going to. I don't feel comfortable with it. And you're going to help advise your buyer a little bit on this. But if they don't feel comfortable about getting this and you don't feel comfortable, terminate the contract. Get your money back. Everybody goes their own way. All right.
Ryan, quick, I missed you for a little bit. I lost you for a few minutes. On the loan approval, do you have a set date for loan approval?
30 days. 30 days from right here. 30 days is the default, and 30 days is what I actually wrote in here. You can make that 40 days. You can make it 25 days, and it's up to the agent. That's why you need to carefully. You guys, I know sometimes you guys just go through here real quickly when you're advising your sellers. You need to very carefully look at every blank in here.
I make it equal to the closing date.
Equal to the closing date.
Yeah, however many days and if they don't notice it, I don't say anything about it.
That's because you're representing the buyer, and that's very smart to try to do. That way they can back out right to the last minute and get their escrow back, right? That would not work if they have a wise listing agent, right? Or someone who pays attention.
Right.
I'm going to ask this question rhetorically. What percentage of realtors are really good? That's rhetorical. Don't answer. So that's what you need to consider.
Come on, let's answer that one.
What's that?
Please, can we answer that one?
Yes, privately. All right. So those are your three options when you get here. Now, I'm going to go into this one too, real quickly until I get to the part about the appraisal. If buyer fails to timely deliver either notice provided in paragraph, any of those 3 notices like we talked about above, to seller prior to expiration of loan approval period, then loan approval shall be deemed waived, in which event this contract will continue as if loan approval had been obtained. Provided, however, seller may elect to terminate this contract by delivering written notice to buyer within 3 days after expiration of the loan approval period. So let me ask you guys something. So day 31, 32, and 33, what can happen?
The seller can get out because they didn't receive the letter.
Correct. It doesn't have to be a letter. You can just tell them look, we got it. Email them. We have loan approval. You don't even need to see the letter. There's no necessary letter. You could just say, we have loan approval, we're going forward. We don't have a loan approval, but we're going forward anyway, or we want out. Okay. Now, so do we need a denial letter if we just don't have loan approval within 30 days?
Okay.
No, we don't. We don't need a denial letter if we don't have loan approval within 30 days. They can contact the lender, and the lender says, yeah, I gave them loan approval last week. Well, then you're lying and you need to get denied. But if you did not get loan approval by the 30th day, then let them know. Okay. If you have loan approval and you don't let them know, guess what? It doesn't say whether or not it's important whether or not you had it. What it says, if buyer fails to timely deliver either notice provided in paragraph 8. So if the buyer fails to notify them, even if they have loan approval, you can still get kicked out of a deal. How does that make you feel? Stupid? Like you cost your buyer the house? And when will the seller kick your deal after 30 days without talking to you?
They get a better offer.
Better offer, right? You ever have a seller who would like to get out of a deal with a buyer because they got a better offer?
Yes.
Anybody ever have that? Why can't they?
Because they're under contract.
Correct, because they're under contract. So when you have a deal, you have a buyer who has put up their escrow, and that escrow is an amount of money that they're throwing into the deal to say, hey, I'm going to finish this deal. The seller signs to sell their house. So the seller is who's more bound, the seller or the buyer?
Seller.
The seller is more bound than the buyer. The buyer can always kiss that money goodbye, but the seller is more bound than the buyer. The seller is the one who's stuck in a contract, right?
Right.
Seller has to hope something goes wrong to get out of the deal. The buyer is in the deal as long as they're in the deal, and the only thing they have to lose is their piddly little escrow if you're not a good listing agent who demands a bigger escrow. So we're going to talk about that, but let me get to one other thing first. If contract is timely terminated as provided in paragraph 8 above, and buyer is not in default on terms of this contract, buyer shall be refunded the deposit, thereby releasing buyer and seller from all further obligations under this contract, right? They get their money back. If loan approval has been obtained or deemed to have been obtained as provided above, and buyer fails to close this contract, then deposit shall be paid to seller unless failure to close is due to 1, seller's default or inability to satisfy other contingencies of this contract, like a clouded title, lien, something like that they can't get rid of. Property related conditions of the loan approval have not been met, such as waived, except when such conditions are waived by other provisions of this contract. Or 3, appraisal of the property obtained by buyer's lender is insufficient to meet terms of the loan approval, in which event the buyer shall be refunded the deposit, thereby releasing buyer and seller from all further obligations under this contract. So 1, the seller deposit shall go back to buyer if the seller can't close. Obviously this has happened before, right? Seller gets to the thing, they can't deliver clean title, they can't close. Property related conditions of the loan approval have not been met. You haven't done all the repairs, you haven't done whatever, if it's a FHA, whatever, the property related conditions haven't been taken care of by the seller. Again, seller's fault. Or 3, appraisal of the property has been obtained by buyer lenders insufficient to meet terms of loan approval. So what else? So even after the 30 days, if they don't have their appraisal yet, they can still walk from the deal. So your client who had the bad appraisal, even if it's after 30 days, they can still get out of the deal because that is not the loan that they signed up for, right? So, because they signed up, they requested a loan for 90% of 265, not 90% of 250. And I don't care if it was 90% of 264 instead of 265, that changed the terms of the deal. Okay. So they could walk for that. Now,
I'll call you back in a minute, Ryan.
Okay. What is the most important thing for a listing agent in all of this?
The loan approval, 3 days, right? 3 days after the loan approval? No.
That's important. That's
Yeah.
important. But the most important thing, what I want to see from you guys is changes here. I want to see this number be a significant number. Okay. Try to get 2% of the purchase price. Okay, if you can get more, you can get more. If they're doing a 95% loan, try to get 2% up here. Okay, if they're doing an 80% loan, then try to get more. Okay, get a significant escrow payment. And what I want to see down here on additional terms is this. I want to see, hold on a second. I just hit the wrong button. Buyer and seller. Wow, can't spell. Agree that buyer's appraisal
Yeah.
will be completed within 24 days of effective date.
I state that it'll be ordered within 12 days. That's
Whatever
what
you want to do. I want it back at least a week before this thing closes. Okay? Because I don't want, if I'm a listing agent, I don't want to see a appraisal not done, their loan approval still contingent on an appraisal after 30 days. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay? So, and that, am I doing my seller a favor if I accept that? If we've been 40 days and they just get the appraisal and it shows that it's not going to meet and then they walk, am I doing my seller any good? Absolutely not, right? So, sorry, let's get back up to here. So that's where that is. I want to talk to you guys about this. Read this. I did this on purpose, right? I don't know if you guys can read that. I don't know if I can make it bigger. Hold on a second. I'll make it bigger. Write seller concessions here and in additional terms. Okay. Don't be dirty and just put 3% back right here. Okay. Do you guys agree that's dirty? What do you think when you see that? When you're the listing agent, that's dirty.
You're trying to
Yeah.
hide something.
You're trying to hide something, right? You're
You
trying
can
to
put
trick me.
You can put C section 20 as well, you know.
You can do whatever you want. I would write 3% back towards seller toward closing costs and prepaid, 3% to buyer towards, and then I would write it again in additional terms.
I do that.
Always check this though. If you're the listing agent, always check this blank. And I wrote it here because I did this as much as I could, I wrote in here to show how small it gets on a contract where people can't read it, right? Check the fine print. Always check this box. Guys, please always check this box. I can tell you no less than, I've been here 5.5 years, gosh, almost 6 years now. And no less than 20 times have I had one of you guys with a listing call me and say they snuck this in right here. My seller signed a contract where they snuck this in right here. I think it's the dirtiest trick there is. So please pay attention to that.
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
So here's where I kind of get a little confused sometimes. So inspection period can be a short time, right? 5, 10 days, 15, whatever that is. Once you're outside of that, which was where most buyers deem that they're done negotiating any repairs and stuff. But then once it gets to, if they're financing the property, once it gets to them shopping around for home insurance, and home insurance is saying, oh, well, you know, the AC, something that probably wasn't maybe negotiated to the full extent after inspection period, and they're unable to get home insurance, or it's going to be really difficult for them, or they're going to have to pay a huge premium to where they're now, you know, second guessing the deal in terms of really getting things fixed because they're saying they don't want to pay a huge premium, or they're getting denied by certain insurance companies or whatnot. So does all that need to happen during the inspection period, or if they're unable to get home insurance or they don't want to pay that premium, are they able to renegotiate these repairs after inspection period? Does that fall under the financing?
You can renegotiate right up to closing if you want, but they're going to, they don't have to do anything. And yeah, you should go ahead and get an insurance quote. I've never heard of it being denied because of the AC, but you should be able to.
They had cloth wiring. It was like an old type system.
Okay. You can find insurance for the people before them should have had insurance. You probably find insurance for anything, but if your premium gets so high that it throws off your financing, then you can get out for financing, as long as you're in your financing approval period.
Okay, so that is tied in together. That's not just part of
Well,
the inspection period.
and you tell the lender, look, I can only afford $18.48 a month. If this thing goes up to 19, I'm out, right? And so
Gotcha.
you can get out for that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, so that's
A good inspector, Ryan, a good inspector also would also help point out those things that may cause the buyer a higher cost or lack of insurance. So that way they can do their shopping around during the inspection period, and they can still get out before they go any further.
And that's why it's important to have a good inspector, because a bad inspector would still note the cloth wiring and they would make a note of it, but a good inspector would say that this is a real issue. Okay. So this is going to affect, an experienced inspector would let you know that's going to affect what happens with the closing.
And it goes the other way too. I had an inspector, after I gave the buyer 4 numbers of 4 different inspectors, they picked one that answered the phone first, and he happened to do an inspection on a home, and he pointed out something with the electrical panel that was not an issue at all to get financing or anything, but he made it a big deal.
Right.
The buyer had to get a second opinion, and this time the buyer went and got like a recognized company out there in Orlando, and the electrician came out and said, that's not an issue, that's not a problem.
Okay.
It could go the other way.
Yeah, I just didn't know if I needed to keep extending the inspection period before they figured out their insurance coverage, because the list agent was was throwing us other agents, but the buyers were tired of shopping around and they just wanted the repairs done. So I didn't know if we needed to keep extending the inspection period to keep having that conversation, or if that fell under the financing period.
I would keep extending the inspection period until you get it. If they won't extend the inspection period, or they won't fix it, if it's really an issue for insurance, then they need to either get out or extend the inspection period.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Let's keep going here. I don't know why I clicked both of those. Home warranty. If you're doing a home warranty, this is how you do it. If you're asking for one or whatever, you typically would already have some of these warranty. This is a made up company, by the way, Home Warranty of Florida. I made that up. So if you call Home Warranty of Florida and give them the address and they tell you what they'll do for how much it'll be, you write that in here. Otherwise, it's $450, $500, $550, something like that. Typically, obviously depends on the house. But that's how you write that in there, just so you know. Always look for this too if you're a listing agent. That's why I put this on here. Some of you guys have missed this before. How does your seller feel when they find out that they just got committed to $500 more? When you're the buyer's agent, when you ask for this, what do you think the seller thinks when they see this? I better add $500 more to my purchase price, right? They're going to, and I'm going to tell my seller, sure, we can do that if they want to, but I would not take $500. I would want $500 more than you were going to get before, right? So think about that on both sides. Educate your buyers of what a home warranty does. They're not a bad thing. Some are better than others, but educate them. Some people just really, really want it, and some people don't care at all. They'd rather pay $500 less, or they realize anything they put in here that the seller's going to not lower their price by that much more. So just keep that in mind, but you need to see it if you're the listing agent. Okay.
I have a question about that, Ryan. I don't have a lot of experience with homeowners warranty, but I did have many years ago, the buyer decided to purchase a homeowners warranty for themselves. And they find out that, I can't remember even the name of the company that it was, but anyway, something went wrong and they called out the homeowner's warranty, and they came out to the house and they were being charged a fee to send the technicians to take a look at whatever was wrong. Is that a true statement for all the homeowners warranty, that they have to pay a fee for someone to come out and identify if the items are even covered under it?
I'm familiar with that. Some of you guys can answer that as well. I am familiar with that. Typically like $100 to come out.
Or 75.
Yeah, sounds about right.
That's a service call fee though. They're doing, the service person comes out to, and then they fix it from there, order their parts and come back at no charge.
Right. They're not supposed to just do that to let you know whether or not it's covered. Somebody
Right.
might have had one that wasn't covered. They should have known that on the phone, but that's what it's supposed to call. And I have some people who swear by them. Some of our people in property management have them and they swear by them. They think they're great. They've had their AC fixed. They've had this fixed and that fixed. Some of them cover different things, and some of them swear by them. And some people are like, this is a complete ripoff. So it's all up to whatever your buyer wants. Okay. But just let them know that every time we pick at the seller, unless we got some dumb listing agent who doesn't check this stuff, every time we pick at this seller, they're going to pick at us back. You'll either have the seller scratch through this, or you'll have the seller just not say anything to you and keep their price $500 higher. Okay. Nothing's free. Okay. Property inspection, right to cancel. Buyer shall have 7 days. Guys, how long does it take to get an inspector out there right now?
A day, 2.
Yep, 2, 3, 4 at most, right? We should have a report on the 4th day at the latest. 7 days. If you guys want to win one of these things right now, if you guys want your offer to be accepted, 7 days is going to help you, right? And that looks also. I like the guys. You got to look at this from a sales approach too. And we talked earlier about, you do your best you can for your buyer. The listing agent does the best they can for their seller, and this is where we're giving one to them, right? This will make them feel positive about us, especially if we try to sneak a couple things by them above the contract. This is going to make them feel positive about us, about our offer.
Ryan,
Yes.
before you go down, can you go back to line 183?
183, yes.
Does it really matter on those two? Because I get a lot of contracts where a lot of agents, they don't check A or B.
Yeah, A is fair. B is, if you have a condo or something like that, if I'm buying a condo, if I'm on the buyer side, I'm clicking that one because God knows how many assessments they have, right? If you got an HOA that's active like a condo, not your typical neighborhood, but a condo, you've got a pretty active HOA. A lot of times they have assessments and they're supposed to disclose them to you, and you're going to see it on their estoppel. But seeing it on the estoppel doesn't help. You're too late. You're too far down the road at that point. If it's a regular house, I'm going to click that. If it is a condo or something like that, anything I worry they might have assessments. And it should be in their HOA disclosure, their condo disclosure if they have assessments. But condo might sell on the market for 4 months, and when they first did it, they didn't have an assessment, and now they do, right? So I'm doing this. I want all of those assessments taken care of, taken out of their seller proceeds, not passed on to my poor buyer who didn't know that they owe $11,000 now.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So B condos, A residential.
B for any. I wouldn't mind clicking B all the time if I'm on the buyer side. I click B. And then frankly, if I'm on the seller side and I know they don't have any, I don't care.
Okay. Thanks, Ryan.
Right?
When you say assessments, it's whatever dues are due to the association. Is that?
No, those are due. Dues are dues, and they prorate those right up to the day of the closing. If you close on the 15th of October, and you've already paid your October HOA or whatever it is by the quarter of the month, whatever it is, they're going to split that, right? They're going to credit the buyer back for the second half of the month. The seller.
If there's a HOA lien, it wouldn't be, the buyer wouldn't be responsible either. That has to get cleared up before you close.
Right. And well, that's what these assessments are though. Assessments are, a lot of times they're in condos and stuff because they had water damage. They had to do a bunch of stuff to the outside, and the HOA can't cover that. They didn't have the funds to cover that. So they assess the owners because it's an association of owners, right? So they assess the owners on a pro rata basis. And that is what this is talking about. But your regular HOA dues, everybody pays for the dates that they owned it, just like taxes and everything else. It's prorated for what you owned it. So that's what's going on here, though. This is for assessments, special assessments, if you understand that. If I'm selling my house, I'm in a regular neighborhood. Ours is like $480 a year. I don't care. We're never had special. I've been here 8 years. We've never had special assessments. We don't have one now. If I'm selling this, I don't care which one you check, right? If we had one, we don't have a gate, we don't have a pool, we don't have anything like that, so I'm not worried about it. But if you're selling a condo, if you're buying a condo, you definitely want to make sure this is clicked. Thank you for the question. You do like just zip right past this. And that's an important lesson is don't zip right past stuff in your contract.
Ryan,
Yes.
real quick on that, some neighborhoods do have it too. We see them a lot in Celebration, and make sure to check that B if you're looking at that. You can always find this information on tax records too.
Yeah, and Celebration, does that have a master HOA too? Master and then neighborhood?
Yeah, they have like 2 HOAs down there.
Yeah.
One for whatever your part of it you're in, then the master one, and then they have special assessments deemed throughout. And so even for the homes. So
Right.
Where did you say you could find that stuff?
if you look on the tax records, you can usually see if there's special assessments
Okay.
being tied to something.
But they should be disclosing that in their HOA disclosure. If they don't, then you get out of this deal anyway and make them cover it. But like I said before, they might have, this thing's been on the market 100 days. They might have not have had a special assessment when they put that HOA out there, and now they do, right? So thank you for that. Errol Estates in Apopka has a master and an individual neighborhood one. There's lots of places around Metro West. All of Metro West has a master and an individual neighborhood ones. So pay attention to the part of town you're working in and wherever you're working. All right.
But, so
CDD
if there were special assessments, and say you didn't know, would this come up at all before you close? Would the title company discover that, or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And would it go then, and it would go on the buyer's closing statement then, or?
No, it would go on the seller's one because you're going to click this one.
Yeah. But I'm saying if you overlooked that by chance, or you did a house and it had the neighborhood like Mike's talking about, at what point do you realize that you just screwed up and your buyer is going to have to pay these assessments? Or
At the estoppel, on the estoppel.
Okay.
All right.
So all of those assessments will need to be paid by closing, regardless if the seller pays it or the buyer, but they will be paid at closing.
All right. Let's go on to this and this little boilerplate stuff. You guys know all this. Guys, do this. Check your boxes that are important here, please. That anything that applies, right?
And Ryan, I had a question on that. Back when you were talking about if financing doesn't go through because of an appraisal, does that really negate the need for F here, the appraisal contingency?
Does it negate the need for what, Mike? I'm sorry.
For the appraisal contingency form for F.
Yes, appraisal contingency is. Well, let's take a look at some of this stuff. I think I'm done on this anyway. Let's go to that. I'm going to exit.
I mean, it's in the contract back where you were talking earlier about financing.
Right. I think the appraisal contingency is almost completely redundant. Let me move these people. You guys see this okay?
Yes.
Okay. Let's read the appraisal contingency, and then I want to look at the sale of buyer's home contingency. Contract is contingent upon buyer obtaining at buyer's expense a written appraisal from a licensed blah, 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 right? The lender obtains this, stating that the appraised value of the property is at least blank. If the appraisal states the value of property is, and a lot of times you guys write purchase price in there or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Buyer shall deliver a copy of such appraisal to the seller within 3 days, terminating this contract, waiving the contingency. So yeah, pretty much what happens every time.
It's really the only time I see needing this then is you're dealing with a cash buyer then.
Right, but
financing.
Honestly, if a cash buyer needs an appraisal, my gosh, we're not doing a very good job with our market analysis, right? But some of them want it, so fine. But if you're doing that, I mean, get your appraisal within the inspection period and just get out because of the inspection, right? I mean, you can do it however you want, but that's sad. And I have seen it on cash deals.
I had called the legal hotline once because I kind of had this situation and I didn't have this appraisal contingency, and they told me that I think it was the appraisal, that if it doesn't necessarily appraise, it doesn't mean that they can't get loan approval or something. And it scared me. And I was like, I'm doing an appraisal contingency every single time, because they made it seem like there was a loophole And I do not remember, it was a while ago.
If you change the amount that the lender will lend, then you are changing the loan approval.
Okay.
So Ryan,
Yes. I'm
quick
sorry.
question.
I'm concerned my computer's not working. Yeah.
Quick question on the appraisal. So now let's say we do the appraisal contingency and we, originally in the contract, we do it for, sale price and we ask for 5,000 closing costs.
Yep.
Now, and the sale price was 265.
Okay.
Now, because, it will appraise at 265, we're hoping we'll get 5,000 closing costs. Now, they did the appraisal. The appraisal came back at 260. Right?
Okay.
Now, they don't have to give, you don't have to give that 5,000 closing costs.
Oh, you
You have to
renegotiate everything.
renegotiate. You renegotiate, right? Okay.
Yep, we recently had one of these. It was they were buying for 170 with $5,000 back, and the appraisal came back at 162. So what the seller did was, we're not giving you $5,000 back, and we'll lower the price to 162.
Correct. Because a lot
Right.
of the agent I was working with, they thought, oh, and I was explaining to her, I said, well, if your appraisal, it comes back lower, you'd renegotiate a contract. You don't have to give the closing costs, only if it appraised at the sale price.
Correct. So
Okay.
your deal that you talked about earlier, Abdul,
Yeah.
if they want to waive that 7,000, then they can, and the seller comes
Right.
down to 250, then they can.
Right. That's why we're hoping, but
Okay.
we're waiting for her to give her an answer. Is like she
So the
thinks
seller's
that-
really giving. So both sides, in that case, your buyer's giving up 7 and they're giving up 8.
right.
All right. All right. Let's look at this. Sale of buyer's property. The contract is contingent on the sale and closing of buyer's property located at 123 Oak Street, whatever it is. Upon entering into contract for sale of buyer's property, buyer shall give seller a copy of such contract by the third party's identification, with the third party's identification, purchase price information obliterated. Okay. Blacked out. Well blacked out, guys, not just like a line through it. If the sale of the property, buyer's property does not close by blank, buyer may, within 3 days after delivery, written notice to seller, either A, terminate this contract, in which event the deposit shall be refunded to the buyer, thereby releasing everyone from all further obligations, or B, waiving and removing this contingency and all financing contingencies and continue forward with the contract. If it is or is not under contract, and buyer shall provide seller a copy of the contract within a day or two, is what you would put here. So, because they already have it. So what is the risk here? What is the risk for the seller here?
That the buyer won't sell?
That their house wasn't sell. What should I be finding out about this buyer's house before I instruct my seller to sign this?
Is it sellable? Or what are they pricing it at, and how long is it gonna sit on the market, and
What's it under
Right.
contract?
Is it even on?
Get a copy of the contract that they have.
Yeah. I'm assuming they don't have a contract, but if they do, we want a copy of that, obviously, and we're going to go through that and make sure it's legitimate. What do we, and which would include doing what? If we're a good agent, what are we going to be doing?
Calling the lender.
comps?
That's pushing. We don't really have the right to do that.
Request the buyer to do the appraisal as soon as possible.
Well,
So
we can't, that's a good idea, but we can't do that. We can't get involved in their deal. But what we can do is we can do a CMA on this property and see if we think it's going to appraise, if we think it's going to go through, right? If it's not going to appraise and it's an FHA deal, what are the chances that it's going to go through? Are they getting 3% back and we don't think it's going to appraise? Or, find out how good of a contract it is. But what I want to do here, if the sale property does not close by, my problem here is the buyer can get out of this deal if their property doesn't close on time. If they put in here something ridiculous. So what I saw last week was their property located somewhere in Apopka, right? If the bar does not close by 45 days from effective date, they wrote in here, okay? And it wasn't on the market. It's a good house in the 250 range in Apopka. It's going to sell, right? but it wasn't on the market. They had pictures and everything. They were about to put it on the market, but they didn't have it on the market yet. And they put 45 days here. How's that sound to you guys?
Tight,
Good, especially in the middle of a pandemic.
risky.
Unrealistic.
Sounds like they're going to not close this property in 45 days. I don't care what they do, right? With today's underwriting and everything else, if it goes under contract the first day, they're not going to sell it in 45 days. It's got to close in 45 days, not be under contract. That'd be closed in 45 days. You guys understand that?
Yeah.
So we want to give them at least 60 days. This thing is going to be pushed off. And what I don't like about this from the listing side is buyer can get out of this deal right up until the end if their house doesn't close.
I
Right.
almost think there should be an insert in there that says that the sale of their property has to be under contract, like within 30 days or 3 weeks or something, and then close.
So what we did was we wrote in additional terms of the contract that buyer's home at 123 Maple Avenue will be under contract by October 31st, or this deal is, or the deal is canceled. Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes more sense.
Yeah, that's what I want to see. Is I want to see their house go under contract quickly, or the deal is canceled. Okay. And we gave them till
But-
December 3rd to close.
Do you
December
just
3rd to
write that?
close.
Did you write that? Did you use this addendum to write that, or
No.
you just wrote it in like the section 20?
I wrote it in additional terms of the contract. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Ryan, but
Yes.
if you are on the listing side and you have a buyer presenting that, and they are not even under contract, I mean, their house could be in the market, but they're not even on the contract, it's really not smart for the seller to take that offer. Because you don't,
Well, okay. So when I move to my next house from this house, I'm at home, everybody. I am going to have to make things slide into place, right? There's a lot of moving parts. I've got to sell this one and buy that one. At some point, I'm risking either being in a hotel for a while or whatever, right? Because you guys know how these deals are, and underwriting and title and everything else. What are the chances that I'm able to move straight from this house right to that house without stopping the truck anywhere and go right there, right? Not that it's difficult. So if I put my house under contract and say I'm going to close, Malvis, if you come buy my house and I agree to sell it to you and close in 45 days, now I've got to go out and find a house that I can close in 45 days, and it's going to take me a few days to find it, right? So this is a difficult thing. Something's got to give here, and typically that give is doing something in 60 days, saying 60 days or less on something, right? Giving a little bit of extra time to make things work. But like Tammy had suggested, and what we did last week was make them where they have to have their house under contract within a time period that I know that they can close on time. Okay. So gave them some time, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to get their house on the market and under contract, which is plenty of time for a 250 house in Apopka, right? Get it under contract, get it out there and get it closed in time to make them work, and for their favor to make them work. Cause my sellers don't care. They got revenue.
Good morning.
All right. All right. So what, does anybody have any questions about that? Does that make sense, Malvis?
Ryan, what contract is that? I never used one of this.
Well, this addendum,
Yeah.
it's a sale of buyer's property addendum. It's called the sale of buyer's property.
Sale of buyers.
And that's for
property.
people who need to sell their house before they'll buy this one.
Oh, okay.
Some people do write this in additional terms, and they don't use the addendum. Okay. How many of you guys have seen this written in additional terms instead of the addendum? You guys have seen it? Raise your
I
hand.
did
if you've
only
seen it.
one.
Okay. So people will write it in additional terms. Any questions on that? Nope.
So you recommend using this instead of additional terms, right? This is better?
If you're the buyer, yeah, absolutely. I don't like you guys or me or anybody being lawyers and writing things.
Exactly.
So anything you see on these FAR bars, the FAR is for the Florida Association of Realtor, the bar is for the Florida Bar. They have agreed that this is boilerplate language that we can use just to fill in the blanks and go from there. Okay, so this is legally approved language. Doesn't mean I like it all, but it's legally approved. It depends on what side I'm on. but it's legally approved. So I'd rather them be the lawyer than you be the lawyer. It gets rid of your liability. Okay. As long as you're filling in blanks, you're safe. All right. Any other questions? And as long as you're checking every blank that someone else might have filled in. So that's what I want you guys to do. Go through with a fine tooth comb every line of the contract. Well, you know where the blanks are. They're not changing the boilerplate stuff. So go through all of the blanks and make sure it's in your client's best interest every time. Any other questions on anything? No? Any?
I do have a question about appraisal contingency. So in the as-is contract, it already has the appraisal contingency in itself. But if like the buyer is approved for more, for example, the house is like $325,000, but its approval letter says $400,000. So do we need a additional like appraisal contingency, or it doesn't matter? Like if pre-approved for more, does that help? I think if multiple offer situation approved for more, it will help, right?
I don't recommend that at all. So what I recommend is if you're offering 325 for something, you go get if you know it's gonna be multiple offer, maybe get something for 330 or something like that, but your lender will change the amount on that pre-approval letter for whatever amount you want. So you tell them I want a 325 and a 330 and a 335, and they'll do that. They'll send it out to you in 5 minutes. Okay. So when you get that, I don't want to send something saying I'm good for 480 if I'm only offering 320 for something, because people know that I can afford more, right? If you, what do you think, if you're selling tickets outside, say you're scalping tickets to an event and somebody tells you, oh man, I need 2 for 100, I only got 100, and then they pull out, they got $500. When they go through their money, they got $500, right? It makes you, it was like, oh man, I could have done more. But if you know someone is good for more money, that's the thing. How many guys, I mean, you guys have had sellers, again, nod your head, raise your hand. You had sellers who say their pre-approval says they can pay $250. Why are they offering $220? Have you got, nod your head, raise your hand if you've heard that before from your seller, right?
Or they want closing costs.
Yeah.
Or they want closing costs, you're not going to get it.
Right. Especially if you're asking for a favor, you're not going to get that for sure, right? We're not going to get any pity when you do that. So make sure that you have your lender write you letters that say that. But now you're talking about, when you're talking about a loan approval, my loan approval is, it states everything on there. My loan states everything on there that I'm paying $250. But let's go back to Dual's deal. I'm paying $265. I'm borrowing 95% of that, and all the details, right? At 3.25%, blah, 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 blah. Now, when someone changes something of that, and I can only borrow, even if it comes in 5,000 low, and I can only borrow 95% of 260 now, that you changed my deal, I can get out.
All right.
Change my deal, I can get out. Okay? Everybody got that? If you want to use the appraisal contingency, by all means, throw it on there. I think it scares people more because they don't go through it with a fine tooth comb, the original as is. A lot of people didn't even know that was in there, and they still use appraisal contingencies because of that. I think it scares sellers more to use it, but use it if you want.
So Ryan, the as-is contract has everything in it in regards to inspections, that appraisals, and you don't need, if you have an as-is contract, is that all you need when you're writing up an offer?
Oh, that's a terrible thing to ask. No, because I don't know what your deal is. If you have the sale of a buyer's property, if you have anything else, I'm not saying it covers everything. No, I never said that. It doesn't cover everything. It covers, it does cover appraisal. It does cover financing contingencies. But no, it doesn't cover everything. There's lots of things that you need. Okay.
Safety addendum.
You need, it depends on your deal. Certainly if the buyer has to sell their property, you need this addendum that we're looking at now. But there are
the items that are more like the financing, that are always there, the financing, the inspection, the appraisal, those items, they don't do, you don't necessarily need it.
You do not need a right to inspect and cancel. You do not need an appraisal contingency addendum. So yes, you're right. Okay. But look at all of these addendums. Oh, you guys can't see them. Well, just type into your transaction desk or form simplicity addendum and see how many pop up, and you will see what I'm talking about. There are tons of addendums. Okay.
Ryan,
Look at this. Go ahead.
I do have now, I'm going to have to send an extension of the contract for the first time. Today is the day that we were supposed to close. I sent them one yesterday, but the seller said that we had 45 days and that he was not going to extend it to that long because we asked for 2 more weeks. That's what my lender said, because they're really busy and turnaround times for underwriting is taking longer. So as an advice, can I have the lender give him like an update directly to the seller, or I'm the one delivering the message?
No, you absolutely can. You can let them talk. You can do whatever you want. In fact, that's what the contract says, is that they have the right. The listing agent could actually call the lender, or the seller could actually call the lender and talk to them about your loan. I don't know what kind of advice they're getting. Maybe they feel like they took too low of a deal or something like that. But if I know that I'm
4% of closing costs, so probably that's what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, because well, here's the deal. Because if I'm the listing agent, I feel like we got a decent deal. I'm telling my seller, look, we're 2 weeks away from closing with these people, or we start all over again, right? And any issues that you had along the way, the next person's going to have. And I would, if you can find anything in an article or something showing about how long underwriting is taking and that kind of stuff, to let them know the next person's going to have the same problem too, right?
Okay.
Then that's the kind of thing. But the listing agent is on your side or not on your side here?
Well, he didn't like the fact that I asked for 2 more weeks. He just said lowered it because otherwise I'm terminating the contract. So I'm about to go and get the extension written for only 1 week. And I already told the lender, but I told my lender, can you just, I don't know if it's good or not to have him contact the seller to, have at least an update.
What kind of, you don't have to tell me who it is, but what company is the lender with?
What do you mean? You don't want me to say?
Don't say his name, but just the company.
Oh, My Mortgage Inc.
Okay. Typically, these guys they should be able to do it. These guys get paid, I told you guys this before, they get paid about half of what we do, the loan officer, for most of these companies. Not the big banks and stuff like that. They just give them like $100. But the people who are the loan officers that you probably know, who are out in these mid-sized companies, they make about half what we do on a deal.
Mm-hmm.
So they're usually pretty incentivized to get things closed.
What conditions are waiting to be cleared? Because I would think by this point you'd have all your conditions pretty much in. Are you waiting for any does your buyer have to submit any more documents, or is everything in?
Everything is in except for they asked for the transcripts, and apparently 2019 doesn't say filed, but the person who did the taxes already presented a letter of explanation of what's going on in the filing something. So that has been sent to underwriting, and we're just waiting for the writing to clear.
But a while to clear that one.
It.
Yeah. So take your week while you can. Get the week that they're giving you. And if it comes down to, you need an extra day or two, then that's a whole different, subject at the end, right? So a week from now, when your lender's telling them, I just need 1 more day or whatever, I've got the clear to close coming out today, then you're that much closer. So bang on that lender to get it done, and take your week while you can.
Okay. Thank you.
Good luck. It's terrible what underwriting is doing to everybody. Everybody's having the same issues. So keep that in mind.
Is that because of the pandemic going on, Brian?
Probably a little bit, because people are working from different locations and working from home and doing all that stuff still. But most of it is because people are doing so many refis right now because interest rates are so low. And every lender will tell you, oh, we put refis on the back burner and we do. I don't know if that's true. Refis are easy money for them.
You know, one lender said they have a lot of FHA buyers too because of the low interest rate, and they're tying up the pipeline for conventional loans as well.
Yeah, they have a lot of loans, period. I can tell you
Yeah.
guys, this is going to be our best month in history, and it's a September, because there was so much pent up demand from March, April, May, June, that July was good, August was better. September is never our best month because, you know, everybody moves during the summer typically, and September slows down. I know some of you guys have had great Septembers. And this is, we're already, when I say we're already, we run about a week behind on getting all of you guys closing documents and all that kind of stuff to us. And we're already at we're about even with our highest month ever already. And we'll get another 50 deals in probably. So you guys are doing great. Any other questions or anything?
Random question. I don't know if this falls under ethics or sales techniques, but how much belief do you have if, you know, for an example, a property is on the market for a really long time and you finally start negotiating and then they start telling you, oh yeah, but we're working with another buyer as well. In terms of how much belief should I have that they're actually working with another, I guess, negotiating with someone else as well? Or is that just kind of them trying to get more meat off the bone?
I can't answer that question. I don't know. You know, I think you kind of have to follow your instincts on it. How long has it probably been on the market?
I mean, it was one that was like for 4 months. And then they said, I mean, and we're kind of up there. And then they said, oh yeah, but this one's cash. So we didn't, I mean, so we're going up in price just because they were really wanting the property. But then it was like, well, where did this come from?
At some point, and that's the problem with falling in love with a property, is you got to be willing to call people's bluff, right? You have to take emotion out of it and be willing to call people's bluff. Either they are, they aren't. Am I convinced that after 4 months they've got 3 people now wanting to buy the property? Probably unlikely, right? But there's lots of reasons the property stays on the market for a long time. Sometimes there's nothing wrong with the property, and the seller just won't come off the purchase price, right? Their asking price. And there might be plenty of interest in it. So you never know. You got to call their bluff or not. You're playing the game. So
right. Because they were asking me, yeah, I was giving my buyers the feedback saying, okay, well, now we have another player in the game. And then they're like, oh, well, they're probably lying. And I'm like, well, that's not ethical. So I didn't know if that was just a sales technique or if it's an ethics thing. I didn't know. I was like, well, I only know what I'm being told.
We have a whole nother training on realtors ethics, and are realtors really ethical? But there's some question there, let's just say. But I don't know that's an ethical violation unless they flat out lie to you and show you a bogus offer or something like that. But I don't know where that falls on the ethics line, but it's not good. But it doesn't really matter. They either buy it or they won't. You either call their bluff or you don't.
Okay.
So if you don't believe it, follow your instincts, call their bluff.
Especially if they didn't drop the price.
And the beauty here, Andres, is if your buyer's right, if your buyer, regardless how they decide that they're on is good for you, because you can call their bluff. And if they don't get it, then they'll know, you know, your buyer's on the side of calling their bluff, right? They're saying they're lying. So I would say, well, let's call their bluff then, buyer, right? I mean, they can't be mad at you if they don't get the property.
Good point. Okay.
So, I mean, that was what I was worried about, is your client being mad at you for not getting the property. But if they're on the side of calling the bluff, let's call the bluff. And I want to know how this works out. So let me know.
Gotcha. Okay. Very well. They did.
All right. Good luck. Any other questions? All right. Oh boy. Next week, I'm going to try to have a special guest for you guys. I know you're getting tired of hearing me. So I'll have a special guest for you guys. And they're not booked yet, so no promises. But check out everything. Guys, we have, don't forget, if you need to go to our YouTube page and check out the thing that Rusty did there from ADT. Guys, use little things to get ahead. Use little incentives like, you know, Rusty's giving you 6 months free ADT for your clients. Give them 6 months free ADT, you know, or something like that. give him these things, he'll either do that or he'll pay for your transaction fee. So one or the other for sending him stuff. But it's little things like that that get you guys ahead. Little things that make people remember you when they do. They actually he actually gives them a check up front for $350, $400, something like that. That's going to cover their first 6 months. And then every month their bill still comes to them, but they have the money to pay it, obviously, out of that money. So go ahead and do that kind of stuff. That makes them think of you every month for 6 months at least. You know, every time they set the alarm, they think of you. You know, do that kind of thing. All right. Any questions on that?
No. I have a
Krista,
question.
wait, I got something real quick for Krista. Krista, on your paperless pipeline, I'm sure you've been on there. You're very diligent. You've been on there. Under the reference tab, there's an Orlando and a Tampa vendor list. Okay. Go on there. I know you're going to be in Lakeland, but go on the Orlando ones, the Tampa ones, and somebody will, all those people pretty much service Lakeland. You're on mute, I think, or I just can't hear you. I think your mic's not working. You need a photographer ASAP. Is there a photographer on there, Abby?
I'm not sure if there is, but if there isn't, I can check out and see, reach out to some people and look.
I think send her John Grimaldi. Do you have his stuff from my? Okay, she's gonna send you one. Okay.
Hey, Ryan.
Yes, sir.
Quick, and I believe I just got it. I was looking at a YouTube video from one of your classes I missed. Is Abby the new Facebook person? Social media?
She is. She's our new marketing.
I didn't get an email. I didn't get an email, so I wasn't too sure.
You got one because she sent it to everybody, but
I got it.
Abby, sometimes Edul doesn't check his email, then he blames everybody else. So if you would please send Edul another email.
Of course, I would love to.
I actually got it from your YouTube. I was like, who's Abby?
Oh. Well, that's Abby.
This is
Abby's
me.
Abby.
Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Okay, any other questions? Comments? Anything? All right, guys.
Thank you. Every time you talk about Assist contract, I learn something new. So
fantastic. I'm glad. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, I'll see you guys soon. Have a great week. We'll see you next Wednesday, and feel free to call me or email me if you need anything else.
Thank you.
thank
All right,
you.
guys.
Thank you, Ryan.
Bye, guys.